Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to our afternoon session, the first session of the afternoon. We are going to be exploring the Latin American market in more detail with the help of my expert panel this afternoon. As we heard a little bit yesterday, the Latin American market has not received the same level of government aid for the aviation industry that has been enjoyed by colleagues in the North, in Canada and the US. We're going to explore a little bit more about the challenges that creates and the crucial role for stakeholder collaboration, some of the steps we can take to ensure a smooth and efficient and profitable restart for all stakeholders in the Latin America region. I'm delighted to be joined by three panelists today. We have Graciela González, who is the head of procurement, from international airports contract specialist at Aeromexico. Welcome to you, Graciela. Graciela, there we are. Hello.
Hi.
Welcome. We are also joined by Gonzalo Yelpo, who is the Senior Legal Counsel at ALTA, the Airline Association. Welcome to you, Gonzalo.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
Good afternoon. And we are rejoined by Rafael, who was on our panel yesterday, Rafael Echevarne, who is Director General ACI Latin American Caribbean. Welcome back, Rafael.
Hi, hello, everyone.
Good to see you. So we're going to begin. We have presentations from Graciela and from Gonzalo, and then Rafael, you're going to make some comments about the market conditions as we find them. We will then open it up to the floor and take questions. So Graciela, if you are ready, then I will hand you the controls and look forward to hearing your presentation.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm Graciela González, International Airports Contract Specialist with Aeromexico Group. And well, thank you very much for having me here. Let's begin with the presentation. Next slide, please. Thank you. Well, we're going to talk about the hot topic, Latin America market focus, collaboration versus COVID, from the point of view of an airline. So first of all, I would like to say that Aeromexico's strategy to fight COVID took 4 stages: financial, commercial, operational, and human resources, which I'll explain one by one later. And first of all, I'd like to talk about the challenges and impacts. Well, to begin with, we had this unprecedented pandemic, and we had fear of the unknown. This had never happened before, so we didn't really know how to act. We even knew some months before it happened, before it started in our country, and we didn't take any actions before it started. So we just had fear of the unknown. Then the aviation industry was one of the most affected, and we had to face airlines bankruptcy here in Mexico. Well, it did happen. And then Aeromexico faced its biggest challenge, which was the global borders closure. And as you may know, Aeromexico's business is outside Mexico, so that was a huge challenge. Then we had the airline global passenger transit decreased 67% on the 2020, and flights and load capacity decreased around 48%, 2021 versus 2019. So at the present, the leading are in the domestic market here in Mexico. Next slide, please. Well, on the financial stage, we faced this crisis strong, but the impact was so strong that we voluntarily chose to go through a process of financial and operational restructuring in order to adapt to reality and not to disrupt our operations or customer benefits. And then we had these budget restrictions, so we had to go through optimization and efficiency. We had to also go through variable cost reduction and to review our unit costs and eliminate some of them. And we opened up to cargo market, which we were already open to, but we really had to focus on it. Next slide, please. Then we have our commercial stage, in which we faced countries' restrictions like border closures, for example. We still have this problem in Canada, the UK, and some other countries which we operate in, but we haven't been able to restart since they're still closed. So that has been a big challenge for us. We had to face the suspension or cancellation of Aeromexico destinations, the evaluation of ASK and RPK. We had to open to cargo charters, which I see as a positive thing, because we made the transportation of medical supplies, and we had humanitarian flights also, which made no revenue for the airline. So we see it as a positive thing. Then we implemented the contactless check-in, which was already implemented, but I think it makes more sense now not to make human contact. As I mentioned before, we had to focus on the domestic flights operations. And one thing that really affected us was that there were no meals on board for a long period of time. Our customers are very used to have good meals during the flights, but we had to suspend it in order to take care of the passengers and also of our people, for crew. Next slide, please. Then we had the operational side. We had to implement the HSMS, and we had to start from the very beginning. We had to create a new one because we didn't have one before. So that was the big challenge. Then we had the challenge of mandatory use of masks, because a lot of people don't feel confident wearing them, but that is a good measure to stop the spread. Then we had mandatory COVID PCR tests, and as a requirement in some countries, but well, nowadays I think it's a requirement in a lot of countries, but Mexico, well, we still don't apply for that. We also applied for special authorizations for transportation of dangerous goods, as we had never transported medical supplies as we did in these days. We also had the issuance of new authorizations to operate in Asian destinations. We supported the Red Cross on transporting medical supplies on domestic flights, and that's something we also did for no revenue for the airline. We also had the authorization of the FAA, the EASA, and the local aviation authority to perform cargo operations in the main deck. That's something that we had never done before, and now we know how to operate a whole cargo flight with a 707 with cargo on the main deck. And of course, we have operational procedures updated to reduce human contact. In this particular case, we used to have a briefing between the dispatch people and the pilots, and now we just have the people on the dispatch delivering the papers to the pilots, and that's it. Next slide, please. Well, and on the last stage, we have the human resources part, where I would like to say that the vulnerable staff was taken care of, and we had a staff restructure according to our operations volume. We were all sent to home office, while the people on the administrative side, because of course the people on the operational side had to keep going to the airport. And well, we have mental health care stations with experts. We have a number that we can dial 24/7 if we have some COVID questions. We have new procedures to access the headquarters. We have temperature screening and sanitizing gel. We have CEO's spots where we know some updates about how the company is doing. And I'd like to add that each and every member of the Aeromexico family have contributed to reducing costs in order to continue guaranteeing the viability of the airline. Next slide, please. Well, and I would like to end this making the question, how do we work with one another and policymakers to ensure a safe, efficient, and profitable restart for all? Well, we need a solid strategy to the airline's full recovery. And as I mentioned, we had the 4 stages. We need to make synergies with commercial partners. And we, as an Aeromexico group, I can say that we are very thankful with our partners, since they were very supportive with us. And they helped us go through all of this. They're still helping us go through all of this. We need airports relief plans. We need general empathy. We need to request IATA and local authorities for suitable standards for new normal. We need to take care of one another, complying with the mandatory sanitization rules. Work together, authorities, vendors, and airlines for the passenger trust recovery during the whole process. And well, if we follow this, then we will be better prepared for market variations due to the new infections in the future. And well, political motivation and better work practices. Thanks.
Thank you, Graciela. Thank you very much. Some very interesting points raised. And if you have questions for Graciela, please do drop them into the Q&A section of the chat, and we'll come to those a little bit later. But for now, I will move it along and hand straight over to you, Gonzalo, for the ALTA presentation. If we can get that queued up.
Okay.
Here we go. Brilliant.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Max. Thank you for having us. Firstly, I would like to make a brief introduction about ALTA for those that are not aware about ALTA or its activities. Next slide, please. ALTA, next slide. Okay, thank you. ALTA is the Latin American and Caribbean Air Transport Association. We serve the interest of the industry in general terms to ensure that our efforts across the value chain of the whole value chain, working together with airline members, obviously, and suppliers, among them the ground handlers, authorities, other associations, and industry stakeholders. Next slide, please. Our board is comprised with the main airlines in the Latin American and Caribbean region, as you may see. And with this way, we grant the representation of the interest of the whole region. Next slide. We have more than, we have 40 airline members in our team. Next slide. And with between full members and associate members. And we have more than 70 companies as ALTA affiliate members or partners. Next slide. Which are companies that have interest in aviation in the region. This is a brief aspect of ALTA. Next slide. The other one. Well, starting with the context of the COVID, you have heard about this in many presentations. Next slide. Okay, this one. Starting with the regional context, in 2019, ALTA was with coming with a story of success. We were almost doubling the size of the industry every 10 years. And at that point in 2019, we were concerned about the struggles that the hurdles that we were facing as an industry for the development in the region and achieving that doubling the size of the industry by 2030. And the problems were in the human resources and infrastructure. The aviation at that point generated almost 8 million jobs, with the consequence of an additional 4 jobs per industry job within the region. Travel and tourism, as you know, generates 17 million jobs in the Latin American countries and more than 8% of the region's GDP. 52% of the tourists in the region arrive through air transportation. Next one, please. Right now, as you know, with the COVID, many people are seeing the vaccines as the means for reactivation. We see that in this region, with the uneven distribution of vaccines throughout the world, is still a problem. With the exception of Chile, the region is well behind in the rhythm of vaccination with its population. Next slide. Having said this, the solution or the interim solution for the region cannot rely in vaccinations. So we need to reinforce the message that testing, and especially the rapid testing that are being implemented, is the way to move forward and not to wait for vaccination, because this is something that will happen in the future. We don't know yet when, and keeping the restrictions or maintaining quarantines for arriving passengers still is a strong deterrent of traveling and kills demand. Next one, please. In this scenario, the industry on the whole value chain has moved in ensuring the new standards through these seals, as you may see. The airports with the ACI Airport Accreditation Program, the safe travel destinations established by the WTTC. The countries have moved forward with the stamp for travel and tourism sector, such as in Colombia, and the industry through ICAO has imposed the CART, the Guidance of Public Health and Risk Mitigation Measures. So the air transport is the safest means for travel, and additionally, it has moved forward with strong measures from the biosafety perspective. Next one. We see that there is an improvement in the passenger confidence through the statistics that we have seen in the past month. Regarding last year, the passenger confidence, the passengers are relying more in traveling when the barriers or the COVID is no longer a threat. So we need to pass the message that traveling is not per se a threat for passengers, for the passenger public. So together with the safe seals that we mentioned in the slide before, and the improvement of the testing measures, we see that this could mean an improvement in passenger traffic in the future month. Next slides, please. But still, the region lags behind other regions. We foresee that not until 2025 we will reach the same levels of transportation as in 2019. Some factors will contribute for the recovery, but the region is still in a weak position due to economic weak performance prior to the pandemic, and also several airlines are suffering because of the limited state aid, but there are still other hurdles to overcome. Next slide, please. And the next, please. Well, the problems that we see is the things that we foresee as challenges. I'm happy to talk about this with the other co-panelists. Is that the tendency to recover the losses from certain vendors, such as, well, the states, for example, raising the air navigation charges, or other vendors such as airports and others, that to recover the losses through the increase of taxes or the fees. In the same manner is such as the airlines look to increase their fares to recover the losses. This would be a deterrent for the demand of air transportation. So we look that the appropriate way to handle this is to encourage transportation by diminishing costs. We see this as an opportunity for air transport and other partners, such as new entrant airlines like Ultra Air and Flycana. They are seeing this opportunity as well. In a way that we manage to continue driving the costs down, we could see an improvement in demand. Next slide, please. Well, on the future, the evidence shows that domestic travel is the one that recovers first, then regional, and finally the international traveling. 74% of the people that have been surveyed, they are looking for at least one overnight domestic leisure trip in 2021. 57% expect to travel within the 2 months after the pandemic being contained. This is something that we need to be careful about. As I mentioned before, we can't wait for vaccination to be being something general in the region, since this is something that is not going to happen in the near future, at least in 2021. But people are still looking for traveling to see the relatives, family and friends and relatives, as we call 72%. This is an improvement since September last year, which was 63%. But quarantines is still a problem. 84% of the surveyed people mentioned that if there is a quarantine, they are not looking for traveling to those destinations. So people are looking forward to traveling in the second half of 2021. And this is something that we need to take hand of this opportunity through lifting quarantines and improving these seals and testing measures. Next one, please. So this is the measure, the basic measure. We need not to wait for vaccines to be generalized here in the Latin American Caribbean region. If we wait for that, it will be too long. We need to reinforce the lifting of quarantines, the safety measures in airports, airlines, and destinations, and the imposition of quick testing on destination and on departure for safe means of traveling. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gonzalo. Interesting presentation. And if you have any questions on Gonzalo's or Graciela's presentation, do drop your questions into the Q&A section with the 2 speech bubbles at the bottom of your screen, and we'll come to those very shortly. I'm just going to ask Rafael to come on screen now. And Rafael, you're just going to give us an airport perspective, not a presentation as such, but we'd be interested to hear your comments on the market, the way ahead, and this importance of being a balanced entry across all different countries in the region.
Okay, so I'm trying to, okay, here I am. I couldn't start the video because you guys had shut it off. Okay, well, thank you very much. Indeed, I don't have a presentation, but I just wanted to share with you some views. Obviously, many of the things that I could have said in the presentation have already been mentioned by my colleagues on the panel. Basically, for those who are not familiar, ACI is the International Airports Organization, and I head the Latin American and Caribbean office based in Panama. Basically, the airports have been, of course, as affected as the rest of the industry. Last year, we lost approximately 500 million passengers in Latin America, and we lost $7,000 million. I mean, $7,000 million less in terms of revenues as compared to 2019. Basically, that is approximately 60% down in both traffic and passengers. The recovery actually was going at two different speeds. We had two countries that were doing relatively well. One was Mexico, the other one was Brazil, but that's mainly because of two factors. First of all, because these are the two largest countries in the region, and there is a sizable domestic operation going on, and I think that Graciela was referring to that. So domestic traffic, of course, less affected than international traffic. And also, very important too, Mexico, as far as we know, is the only country in the world that didn't impose any kind of restrictions whatsoever. As I say, I don't think that there are any other countries in the world that were in that situation, which is good because, that meant that traffic in Mexico was recovering relatively faster. So we were going at two different speeds, okay? Now, unfortunately, January and February, things were going relatively well in terms of recovery throughout the region. January and February have seen a decline in that recovery, actually, mainly as a result of the imposition of PCR or COVID test requirements to enter the US. And as you, of course, understand, the US is the #1 international market in the region. And then, of course, once again, the reimposition of certain restrictions, like, for example, Brazil, which was a country where there were no restrictions. And then, they, because of the situation in Brazil, they reimpose or they impose requirements for PCR testings and what have you. Now, what we see now is that the recovery, looking into the future, probably is going to go at two speeds as well. But here we have different players. On the one hand, we have Chile, which is one of the most advanced countries in the world in terms of the vaccination process, and the rest of the region. Now, the problem here is going to be, of course, where are the Chilean citizens going to fly to? Because, within the region is going to be difficult if vaccination is a requirement. That's why, and in line of what ALTA was saying, definitely, we need coordination between countries in terms of accepting passengers who have done a PCR test or any other COVID test, and of course, those who are vaccinated. And I'm really highlighting this because we see some hesitance in some countries. Like, for example, I think I mentioned in the discussion yesterday, Panama suddenly yesterday reimposed, or actually they imposed the necessity to do quarantine for any passenger who has been in Latin America, in South America, to be more clear, okay? Because of the spread of the Brazilian COVID variant. Well, that variant was going around for a while already, and it is this hesitancy, is this uncertainty that actually hurts tremendously the recovery in the market. Now, what have we done as far as the airports go? ALTA mentioned it in the presentation. We introduced an initiative called the Airport Health Accreditation, which basically is a program that looks at how airports have responded to the recommendations that came out of ICAO, okay? And of course, with our own measures and the ECDC, European Center for Disease Control, and the US CDC. So basically we actually created this program to check if the airports are indeed following those recommendations, which basically come down to, of course, the social distancing, the reinforced cleaning protocols, the use of masks, restricting the access of non-passengers to the terminal buildings, and so on and so forth. And I think that together with the airlines in Latin America, the industry has responded relatively well. Now, in terms of relief packages from the governments, you said it very clearly, we actually haven't gotten any money. The airports didn't get any money from anyone. Some countries were actually much more willing to help the industry, in particular, in the case of Brazil, where actually they deferred the payment of the concession fees, and they actually are considering the extension of the concession contracts to allow for the recovery of the traffic and then, of course, the generation of revenues. But other than that, there hasn't been any financial assistance as such. But of course, we know that the airports, the airlines are actually not doing well at all. And of course, there is no money in the region. It is as simple as that. Now, in terms of the future, looking into the future, well, we think that we have to reinvent the industry. We have to actually take this opportunity to do basically two things. On the one hand, we have the whole introduction of technology that we were talking about. And then on the other hand is the whole regulatory framework that, don't worry airlines, we are not talking here about economic regulation as such, but actually liberalizing the market. We think that if there is a time to really take that step further, to really allow the air transport industry to really thrive, it is now. And one of the measures that we should actually introduce is actually opening up the industry so that Aeromexico, if they want, they can fly inside Brazil and likewise, and so those are some examples of the things that we think are going to be happening in the future in order to get this industry up and running, which is absolutely essential for the social and economic development of our region. So this will be my comments, and I'm open to any questions.
Rafael, very interesting comments and reflections there. And Gonzalo and Graciela, if you wanted to switch your cameras on, we can now throw it open to a few questions. There we go. When we look at what we're talking about there, and Rafael, you just mentioned it with Panama reintroducing quarantine, countries, we talked about this yesterday a little bit, but acting in the national interest unilaterally to impose some of these border restrictions. How confident are we that we've got the lobbying influence and we have the right people in the right places to influence governments and just communicate how damaging some of these measures can be? Because you're talking here about Gonzalo, a lot of different nations making up the Latin American region. It only takes one and the whole thing would seem to be set back, right?
It's difficult. It's a very good question. The issue here is that, and I can personally, I can understand the measures that are being taken are basically as a response, a political response to the public opinion. People are afraid and they are taking measures. And there's no, in many cases, there is no reasonability on those measures because everyone knows that it's not going to move nothing, that type of restriction. But people are calling for that. So this is a moment where the lack of reasoning in many cases is patent. For example, the transmission of COVID through the air transportation, it's something that has been proved that is not it's not meaningful at all in most of the countries. The virus is going by other ways, by other means. It's spreading within the interior of the country. But people are like if it is like if you are suffering from certain type of threat outside your house, and the instinctive measure is to close the doors, close the windows, and stay safe inside. It's like that type of sense that the people are having, and I think that the governments are just replying with doing what they are requested to do by their voters, just like that. And I don't know how to explain further to the authorities when we are having this type of conversations. They say, well, we take into account what you are saying, we understand your position, but nothing else happens. Nothing else happens. Maybe Graciela and Rafael can add something on this, but I feel that we are, in a certain way, we are with hands tied by, in many cases, by the public opinion.
Graciela and Rafael, did you want to comment on that? I mean, presumably the same governments are then reacting when the economic damage is done, because you've shown there the economic reliance on aviation for jobs and tourism, and those same governments that see it as a populist move would have the consequences of you know, by restricting the entry requirements, there is a loss of jobs, and they're then unpopular and criticised for those measures, and are looking to open borders somewhere further down the line.
Well, I would like to say that Mexico has been very criticized because of the non-restrictions applied to the entrance to our country. And well, we have heard a lot of things outside that maybe we are very irresponsible, but at least we keep our economy moving. And yes, I agree with Gonzalo. We have our government doing, taking some actions required by the people. So, in Mexico, at least I can say that I am responsible for stopping the spread. I need to take care of myself and of the people I live with, and that's it. You know, we have it's in ourselves. We are responsible for that, and then the measures can be taken and can be done easier.
What's the mood been like, Graciela, amongst the passengers? So have the Aeromexico team had to reassure people about the hospital grade quality filters on the aircraft, and people needed that reassuring and that confidence building, or are they just very happy to travel as they did before?
People were not confident traveling. Traveling stopped for, I think the aviation stopped for few months. People didn't want to travel at all because we didn't even know anything about the virus, so we didn't even know how it spread or how to stop it. And people were not comfortable traveling. And right now, people are more comfortable wearing their masks and just not touching their eyes and the mouth area, like the ears and all that. So we are getting more information from the government, and people are getting outside. Restaurants here are open, and a lot of places are open nowadays because we have more information from the government and we know how to stop the spread. So I think it's all about information.
Thank you. You mentioned, just move on to, in your presentation, Graciela, you were talking about synergies with commercial partners. Can you just tell us a little bit more about how that looks in terms of the relationship with ground handlers and some of the synergies you've brought in working through this crisis?
Well, yes, I think that's one of the most important points of my presentation, because at the end, the aviation is confirmed by all the stakeholders. We are one, and we really needed our partners to be supportive because we were not able to control everything, mostly on the economic side. So they waited and they took good care of us. So that was like one of the most important points of these actions that lead us here to continue on the aviation business.
Thank you. We've got about 5 minutes left, and I'd be interested to get your views on, we've heard there from Gonzalo, looking at that market recovery being, what about, I think you said 2025 in your slide, so around about a year after the rest of the world, as we heard in the ALTA, Peter's slides yesterday, 2024. How different does the Latin American market look? Can you guys give us a picture of how you see it in 2025 in terms of the makeup, the key operators, some of the big changes that might come about? Big question. Rafael, can you lead on that one? How different does it look by the middle of the decade?
Yeah. Okay, sure. I mean, our numbers are very much aligned with those of IATA. We think that in 24, we should actually be going back to the same level as 2019. Of course, this is all purely speculative because of the fact that we don't know how fast the vaccines are going to be rolling out. As I was mentioning before, Chile is well ahead. The others are not that well organized from that point of view. But then, of course, you have Mexico, where the rollout of the vaccines is way behind. as compared to the US, and yet there are no restrictions. So it's very difficult to tell. But yeah, our number is around 2024. In terms of, we expect that, of course, business travel, like everybody else, is saying, is not going to catch up as fast as just visiting friends and relatives and tourism. However, tourism, we know people want to travel. We know people want to go to the Caribbean. That is a fact. I mean, both from the US, from the rest of Latin America, from Europe, people are going to fly. I mean, just today, I actually read that that TAP from Portugal is going to be flying to Cancun. Okay, what a time to make an announcement, okay, at this very moment. So actually that is very good. Austria the other day also announced that they were flying to Mexico. So as you can see, people want to fly. We believe that the experience in flying can be better than it was before. I think we were mentioning yesterday that technology is our most important ally in fighting this crisis and also improving, the experience. So we are positive from that point of view. The big thing here is coordination between countries. That is the most important thing. And of course, the rollout of the travel passports, which will happen. It is actually happening, but the coordination between countries is absolutely crucial.
You're on mute, Max.
I knew I'd do that several times. Thank you, Gonzalo. Rafael, just to wrap up though, does the market look, in terms of the key operators, similar to how it is now, or do you see that there's going to be a natural, evolution in terms of who's there?
Well, that is actually a very good question, and I think that maybe Graciela is better suited to answer. Yes, we know that there are the key 3 airlines in the region are going through financial restructuring, and of course that is a matter of concern, and people will be very careful in adding capacity. I cannot say any more than that. Of course, there is going to be a changing landscape, probably. And that is why we are so supportive of the idea of liberalizing the market even further. I mean, it's about time, to really stop people flying around if they want to fly around. Okay. So, my big concern, to tell you the truth, is that there are.
I think that here we go.
Have lost service issues that some airlines are. Oh, hello. Yeah.
Thanks, Rafael.
Did you lose me for a moment?
We just lost you for a moment.
Okay. So I was just saying that my main concern is that certain secondary cities in the region have lost services. Okay, and my concern is how much time will it take for those services to come back? That is a big concern because it has an impact on the social and economic development of those particular parts of the region. But yeah, the airlines, big concern. And as I say, maybe Aeromexico is better suited to talk.
We'll come to you in a moment, Graciela, for the final word on that one. Gonzalo, your views on the change and the makeup come 2025.
Well, as Rafael was mentioning, we see that the recovery will come from the domestic, the big domestic markets, such as Brazil and Mexico, the families and relatives traveling, we call it the ethnic traveling, such as the one between Mexico and the US. And the good news on that is that both countries are remained open during the whole pandemic. Many changes that have arrived will be reinforced, such as the technology and that type of things. Many technological things that have arrived are going to stay. And regarding the shape of the market, we think that the airlines that are in the process of restructuring, looking at past experiences, those airlines that go through this type of restructuring solution generally tend to come in a stronger way to the market. However, we see that for example, the low-cost companies are entering with a stronger force in the markets, especially in the point-to-point in Colombia, in Mexico, Central America, and Peru. They are developing faster, taking the opportunity of those markets, city pairs that are not served by the traditional airlines. So that is something that we need to see in the future, but they are, I think, personally, I think that they are coming stronger than, and they are coming to stay.
Thanks, Gonzalo. And finally, from you, Graciela, the future in the next 5 years and how you see the market evolving come the middle of the decade.
Well, I think that we are going to get used to this, and as other viruses have come here to Mexico, for example, we just need to get used to that, to adapt, and to make new strategies in order to fight those things. Because right now it's a virus, but at some other point there's going to be something else. So we just have to readapt, and I think that we are already recovering. It's not going to take that long to recover. We're already recovering, and as Rafael said, people will want to travel to the touristic places, and well, here in Mexico we have a lot of touristic places to enjoy. So that's something we need to keep on doing, and we can't stop that. I mean, we were kept home for a long time, and we did not stop the spread. So we definitely must keep on moving with life. That's it.
Thank you very much, Graciela, and thank you to Gonzalo. Thank you to you, Rafael. Fascinating discussion. We wish you all the very best, and thank you for your contributions to the conference.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy the rest of the sessions. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.